What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Stay Hot Podcast. Why should I say the Slay Hot Podcast? I'm Bladen Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponauer and Theo Ash. We have a great episode planned for you all, as we're going to talk about what coaches need to get fired after a day of NFL football that was pretty mundane in a season that's been mostly crazy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into all of that, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing?
You know, I'm looking at a coach that we may talk about here today, Matt Nagy, on the sideline of my Packers-Bears game. And like I said before, I never get nervous before Packers-Bears because the Packers win every single time. And they're up by 11 right now with 11 minutes left. I'm feeling pretty good. Our special teams, we're talking about coaches that need to get fired. Packers special teams coach, heads will roll.
Yeah, there's no reason this should be a close game right now.
Not even a little
special
bit.
Team was anything good.
Letting Jakeem Grant single-handedly keep the Bears in this game.
Can't say that was on my bingo card. Jakeem Grant carrying Chicago, but I guess here we are.
It wasn't on Nagy's either. He got interviewed at halftime, and they're like, "Did you expect Jakeem Grant to have a big game like this?" And he said, "No."
I mean, I
don't think anyone expected this. Yeah, but it is what it is. But, and I know, Matt, you're struggling a little bit as a Panthers fan, and we'll get into Matt Rule because I know you have some stuff to say about the Panthers.
I've been on the Matt Rule needs to be fired train for a while now, and the Panthers are just a miserable team. There's a lot of fan bases who are like, "Oh, our team's miserable," but we got to be up there, dude. I know we have 5 wins. Like 5-8 is not that bad, but we were making win now moves during the season, and we're 5-8, and we have like the 8th pick right now.
Yeah, all the corners you traded for.
Oh yeah, and that's the funny thing about that. We're gonna need a corner in the offseason because C.J. Henderson, who we traded a third for, bad. Dante Jackson, not bad, but he still gets burnt, and we're going to have to pay him, and we don't have that much cap space. I have a hard time believing they're going to fork up the money for him. And then Gilmore is probably going to walk because he wants to be on a contender. And then J.C. Horn is coming off a pretty big injury. Now, I still expect him to be good, but that leaves us with only one guy I trust. So the strength of this team, the ultimate strength of the team, was supposed to be the cornerbacks, and we were getting ESPN posts. Oh, look at all these names. And just not that good. We dropped multiple interceptions today. It was hard to watch.
I almost feel bad. But I've gone through the ringer. So
the one thing that can redeem it is that if us not having a second corner leads to us somehow drafting Sauce Gardner, then it's all right. Then it all worked out.
That would be hilarious. That would be maybe they could get Ritter and Gardner somehow. That would be, what if
Ritter and Gardner?
I don't know how they could swing that, but they need both. That would be fun. Anyway.
That would be fun. Before we get into all that we have to talk about today, make sure you leave a like, a review, all the great things you've been doing to help promote this podcast on all platforms. And if you haven't yet, make sure you follow us on TikTok at StayHotPod for some great content there. There was a tweet, I don't know if you guys saw it, that every podcast has the same co-host, and it's like just Disney characters.
I have strong opinions about that.
I want to hear your, because I don't think we fit that bill.
If you haven't seen it, go look it up. Just go look like every podcast.
It's the fat guy from Toy Story, the dad from Inside Out.
Inside Out. And Ratatouille, the Ratatouille guy.
Inside Out sucks ass, dude. It's so bad. It's bad.
Hate that movie.
It's an idea merchant movie. Everyone fell in love with it as soon as they heard the idea for it, and then the actual movie happened, and it was like, this is not a good movie.
It's just not for me. It's just not my movie.
It's not a good movie.
But the thing about that meme is that it is so vague. Like, for instance, everyone has these guys and it's the dad from Inside Out. What is his characteristic? Like, that's just a guy.
He's just
to me, like to 99% of people, that's just some dude. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that is 99% of podcasts. And then like the guy from Ratatouille is just like vaguely like maybe a little nerdy or awkward, which is like, I guess. And then I don't even really know the other dude. I'm pretty sure he's just like
greasy Toy Story guy. Who is none of us are greasy Toy Story guy.
Ultra capitalist, like I don't know.
Yeah,
it's like
I don't know.
Guess. So I just think it's so vague that it could fit. Like you could make an argument for any of the three of us being any three of those characters, almost.
Yeah, that's probably fair. So does it fit? Sure, but Mickey Mouse meme. But moving on to the Stay Hot Shock, which doesn't exist because this was the most mundane week of football. It's been a crazy season. Like Theo's upsets, leading up to this week, or I don't know if it's still what, but there was a certain point where Theo's upsets were doing better than his locks.
Yeah, because there were so many. And this week I went 0 for 2. I got 0 and 2 for my upset picks. And everyone was like, "Oh, you suck at these." None of the upsets hit.
there weren't any upsets. Not a single done anything. There's not a single upset today. Every team that was projected to win won.
Maybe I'm a little shocked that the Chiefs won by 40.
Yeah,
that was a little bit surprising. And that's it.
No, like you look at the slate of games, Browns, Ravens, like the Browns were up to like 24-3. Like for a long time, that game was not close until like the last 5 minutes.
There ended up being some good endings. Like all the games were whatever, the favorites won. But the Bengals 49ers game ended really cool. Like that was a really good ending. Mm-hmm. But I cannot believe the Ravens made it as close as they did, made you sweat a little bit, Bladen, which we'll get into, and then the Bills. So the slate redeemed itself a little bit after the first window. But let's get into some of those games, and I'll give you an excuse to talk about. We always talk about this is our weekly Browns segment.
Weekly Browns
got off must-win game for them, Absolutely. Really, and they all are. But yeah, this was a game that they almost blew it in the second half. So I don't know, Bladen, what your thoughts were on what went wrong.
I would not have been surprised if we blew it. It would have been a very Browns thing to do. Baker didn't look too bad. He didn't look too bad today. I wish we would run the ball more.
I did not watch the whole game, admittedly, but from what I did watch, it looked like they were struggling a little bit.
Chubb was not at his best. I thought Chubb needed to get going north and south a little bit more than he was. He was kind of dancing.
I'll give you a little bit of background to that. So Nick Chubb against the Ravens has been able to kind of dice them up on cutbacks. Like the past few times that they've played, he'll like do like an outside power and he'll just be able to like cut back and take something like right up the seam and go like 80 yards for a touchdown. And he tried that a couple of times, and every single time he like stepped into a defensive lineman. I think the Ravens just played to Nick Chubb really well. But I still wish, like, why did Kareem Hunt was like involved?
Well, he got banged up, didn't he?
He got hurt.
Yeah, but like even before, like
we got hurt pretty early in the game.
I'm talking like the first drive, we came out and we just didn't run. And we ended up punting.
Well, you guys averaged 3.4 yards a carry. I'm looking at the stats now.
We didn't run the ball at all, like early on in the game. I was just like,
well, you went up early in the game is when you did good. Early in the game was when you went up 24-3 or whatever it was.
I know, and maybe I'm nitpicking at that point. I did like Donovan Peoples-Jones, real deal. That dude made an insane catch on the sideline. He is.
I do. I like him, but all I'm saying is somehow I feel like I'm simultaneously hearing that's like all the Browns receivers are good individually, but sometimes
it's just Peoples-Jones and like Higgins is all right. Landry's not really all that great.
Here's my question.
All of our tight ends were hurt except for Hooper. So
here's my question. The Defensive Player of the Year award race is as close as I can remember it. Like it is JC Jackson has how many picks this year and he's not even getting an ounce of hype. right?
I think he's
Robert
second in interceptions this year. Or maybe
Robert Quinn, I don't know how many sacks that dude has. He's not even getting a smidgen of respect.
There's a lot of guys who have a lot of
because
like
there's
Max Crosby's had a great year,
and he deserves a smidgen, at least a smidgen.
Yeah, I don't know how many sacks he has. He's about to break the Bears' all-time single-season sack records. Anyway,
12.
He's got 12. Yeah, he's been really good. There's been a bunch of guys who have been really good, but 3 especially have stood out, and 2 of them were really good today. Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and TJ Watt. I can't pick. They're so good, all of them. And today I was like, oh, it's like before I was like, okay, like you look at Watts, like the counting stats and with the sacks and the forced fumbles, and it's like I know that the pass rush win rate and the pressure rate for Garrett is a little bit higher, but it seems a little bit hard to like. Is that really what we want to go on over the more traditional stat? And then there's Micah Parsons, and he looks so good today. And then Garrett had the touchdown. So, do you guys have any opinion on where you're leaning for Defensive Player of the Year? Because
I will say this much. I will say this much. You cannot give it to Micah Parsons. Not necessarily.
Yes, you can.
Not because he's not deserving of the award, but because TJ Watt and Myles Garrett are due. They are both. They are.
There's no due. The best in the season.
And are they not playing at that level? So if it comes down to like it's too close, and
you have to decide on what has happened this season. No deal. Screw that.
And if I'm deciding on what's happened this season, I'm probably still leaning Myles Garrett.
If you would give it to Myles or TJ, that's fine.
And all I'm saying is if you come to like the end of the season and it is a tie, it is a
not
and you
possible.
you couldn't possibly pick.
Yes, okay.
I would not
all exactly perfectly dead.
Then I would not pick Micah Parsons.
Bogus.
Sure, if they're all exactly the same, I'll maybe say Watt for now, just because I think that pass rush win rate and pressure rate concerns me a little bit, just because I love those stats. I think that I actually don't love pass rush win rate, because you look at 3 different websites and they'll have a different number, a different answer on what their win rate is.
ESPN, I'm pretty sure, is the most trustworthy, but I could be wrong.
They are, but even then, it's like, what is it? So that's kind of my hesitation there. Double team rate again is something that is a little bit questionable on how much they can control it. Like at the end of the day, I think like when you look back, history will remember like the high level impact plays, which makes me sort of lean Watt, but man, it's close. But Micah Parsons might be him, like I'm not joking, is having maybe the best rookie season I've ever seen from anyone ever. Like, I am not kidding.
You're not that far off.
He's made. When I was doing my player review for him on TikTok and I was watching him as an edge rusher, I was like, this is the best edge rusher I've watched this year. He wins like more than anyone else wins. He just crushes guys. Not to mention he's been phenomenal off ball. Like, give me a break. It's like he is so special.
There were 2 plays in particular I watched in today's game against Washington where he just devoured an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
He's totally annihilated him.
If you were building a defense for just this season and you could start with one of those 3 players to build it, who would you take?
That's tough.
It's so tough. It might be Parsons. He might be the best defensive player in football this year.
Parsons can probably do more than Watt and Garrett.
Yes, he's a chess piece. He's been disruptive on the first and second levels of the field. He lives to create havoc, and he's done it every single game.
Maybe this is a different way. Who would you rather be game planning? Like, who's the one you would want to game plan against the least? Because it might be Parsons because he's so.
It might be Parsons because he's so versatile. Yeah,
we've got more games to play, so I'm not worried about making this decision now. But I am very, very, very open to the idea of it being Parsons. Now, if somebody at the same time, I'm very much a counting stats fan. Like if TJ Watt goes absolutely nuts and he like breaks the sack record or gets really, really close to it, yeah, give it to him.
Yes.
Cool number. Nice. But I think it's neck and neck, and you just look at the rest of the season, and whoever plays the best wins.
I agree. I'm glad we don't have to make the decision now, but it's like, man, I haven't even talked about Garrett, and Garrett's like right there, and he scored a touchdown today, and he's so good. And it's such a good year for defensive players. There's been just stars everywhere, and like Ramsey's been great. Like Terrell has been great. It's been phenomenal for the defense. There's been some inconsistencies on the offensive side of the ball and figuring out which quarterbacks are good this year. But man, defense is the defensive player this year. Yeah, has been really cool.
I love Garrett. I'm a Browns fan. A little bit of bias.
As you should.
Well,
yeah,
listen,
and there's no issue with saying Garrett.
I was thinking about like, man, I need another Browns jersey. And not because the one I bought is a Baker jersey. But like, am I wrong to get a Myles Garrett jersey? Like,
as far as buying a Browns quarterback jersey goes, you've done pretty well with Baker.
I think I did a great job. I think I did a great job because I could have bought a Manziel jersey when they drafted. Everyone bought a Manziel jersey.
Dude,
I didn't.
We live in Columbus. Well, we live in Columbus, and I go to Goodwill a lot. The number of Johnny Manziel jerseys I have seen is absolutely ridiculous. You'll go, there'll be like 3 at one store.
That's funny.
Brutal. But I will say, a couple weeks ago, I said they absolutely had to beat the Ravens. Like, this was the game. Yes. And I don't want to discredit them at all, but it does kind of feel like you needed the moon and the stars to beat them by 2. Like,
I don't know about that.
I think bye week at home, Lamar hurt. You have to stop them on a final drive and win by 2 against a backup quarterback. It's a win against a tough team. But I don't know if I'm like crazy impressed.
That's true. But I thought that the game was a little bit, it was a little bit more lopsided than the score indicates. I mean, the Browns really were in control of that game. I thought it was a little bit, the Ravens needed a lot of luck to make the score as close as it was.
So what luck happened?
Rashad Bateman got away with an offensive pass interference on Greedy.
And he made a great catch, but that's the player doing something great. So that's not really luck, is it? That's
it's just like the Ravens kind of came back.
They did kind of come back, but
it's not like,
they needed the onside kick.
I'll onside. I've been thinking a lot about this type of stuff lately, where it's like, is an onside kick luck? It's like, yes, but you can be better at getting onside kicks. So I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this one, right? Like,
I think onside kick is luck.
I would say that
the bounce is luck for sure, but
you can execute an onside kick well. And you do need to kind of bounce your way. So it's some luck. And I guess you need some luck to win any NFL game. But
sure.
The Ravens did have the ball with a minute down 2. And
with Justin Tucker.
That it's not like they made it closer, but they were never actually in it. They were always like, man, they're not actually in it. They were in it. They did get themselves back into the game. So I would say that the game actually was close.
I suppose that's.
I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from for sure.
But the Browns, they made it close, but maybe the Browns.
The Browns kind of control their own destiny now, so it is what it is for them. And
especially with the Bengals losing.
Yeah, it was a great week for them. Everything went right, so they control their own destiny now. Will they be able to capitalize on it? I don't know. Right now, I might lean no, but it's a lot more likely than it was.
Raiders,
last week.
Packers, Steelers, Bengals is a very interesting schedule.
I see a lot of winnable games there. I mean, the Packers is going to be really tough.
At the beginning of the season, I remember you said you wanted to ruin my Christmas.
Yeah,
this might be a very ruinable Christmas game. It's going to be a big one. They're going to need to win.
They're going to need to win. Anyway, let's get into some.
But yeah.
We'll get into some of the other games here. I want to talk a little bit more about the Cowboys. I do. I talked already about Parsons and how I think that he is absolutely special in the conversation for best player in football year one or best defensive player in football year one. I guess Donald is still probably that, but defensive player of the year in year one. He's amazing. But who else is amazing is Randy Gregory, and he came back today and changed the game with that pick. Amazing play. Yes. DeMarcus Lawrence is back, and he's perennially underrated because the sack numbers aren't quite there, but his impact of the game felt. Gallimore came back, and he's a defensive tackle, and that's the kind of the one weakness you saw in that front is that interior defensive line position. He's back and played a really solid game. Steamrolled a center. You look at, the corners, and Trayvon Diggs is Trayvon Diggs. Very decisive, but probably overall a net positive. And Anthony Brown is good, and they've got a good cornerback room. Safeties are a little bit questionable, but overall, defense won them the game today. And they were early in the season. Defense was winning them games. Dangerous team on defense. Plus, the offense has Cooper and Lamb and Dak and the offensive line and Pollard and Zeke.
And Cooper's not even 100% right now.
Yes, they are kind of a sleeping contender because I don't think anyone really looks at the Cowboys and says that should be a Super Bowl favorite. That's a team that's going to go on a run. But man, if they can get these games where everyone clicks, and I don't trust McCarthy. I don't in the playoffs. I don't trust Mike McCarthy. But they are kind of a sleeping giant where they have the potential to just run anyone out of town. And today, just the full capacity of that defense was.
They kind of are. I mean, if the defense is cooking and you got the receivers and the offensive line and the backs, I think the guy who's been a little inconsistent, honestly, and I know this because he's on my fantasy team, is Dak Prescott, dude.
Yeah.
You got to play probably four, since they're in the NFC. I don't think they're going to be a 1 seed, right? I don't have the standings pulled up in front of me, but you got to play four
probably
straight
not.
Really good ones. And he does not have a ton of playoff experience, so that's probably the big thing for them. But if the defense can keep cooking like this, there's no reason why they can't go on a run. They're not you're right, they're not the favorites, but there's no team where you're like, yeah, they're just huge dogs they can be.
If you put them in the AFC,
they're the one.
They would probably be the best team there by a pretty decent margin. In the NFC, there's a couple teams better than them.
If they can get to the Super Bowl, here's the thing. Like with the NFC, there are probably 3, maybe 4 teams that if they made the Super Bowl, I would absolutely pick them to win. I don't care who they're matched up against.
Right.
And that's probably the Rams, Bucks, Cowboys, and maybe Green Bay.
I kind of think that it's
and Cardinals
having a weak
Cardinals,
AFC overall.
I was like, I know I'm forgetting some
with 1 or 2 teams that you are like, yeah, maybe they can contend. Probably bodes better for the AFC winning the Super Bowl. Because I would rather not have to go through the absolute ridiculous gauntlet of like, I have to play Rams, Bucks, Packers, and then I have to go play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That's brutal.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Chiefs, or the Patriots, they're going to get a bye week, and then they're going to get to play like who knows, and then who knows, and
yeah,
maybe you play like the Raiders, or like
probably not after the performance today.
Actually, it's true.
Let's transition over to that game. Chiefs
talking about defense. Yeah, Jesus Christ,
good,
good. It's good now. That's fun.
That's terrifying.
So the logo stomping, real quick. The problem with the logo stomping is not that like it's just stupid or it's giving the other team bulletin board material or it's just that it's silly. It's a silly thing to like, okay, dude, who cares?
I think it's a lot cooler to celebrate on your own logo. Like going to your own logo goofy. To like praise your own logo is a lot cooler than like trying to thrash someone else's.
I think celebrating on someone else's logo is a little goofy. I guess I get it, but I don't know.
You want to I'm sure it was a coaching thing. Like, let's go get some energy before the game. Like, let's as a group go. But here's what my favorite example of this that I've ever seen. I believe it was college football, maybe Georgia versus Florida. Georgia scored the opening touchdown, and the entire bench cleared, and they all celebrated in the end zone after the first touchdown. Like they drew the excessive celebration,
cool.
and they were like, we don't care. We scored this touchdown. The entire team was hyped in the end zone. And that to me was like the way, if you want to do that, that's the way you do it. But that's again more of a college thing than a professional athlete thing. Like you're in the National Football League, and it just seems a little childish to go scuff up the logo.
It's like I'm going to go stomp on their logo. It's like
there's probably like some 35-year-olds doing that. Like, come on, dude.
Are you watching the Packers game?
I've got it on in the background. Yeah, it looks like the game's pretty well in hand. So,
an onside kick just happened. I want you to watch it if you haven't already.
I guess I
see. Here's the problem with the Raiders, though, and when first time we score a touchdown, we'll go celebrate.
Yeah,
that would not have happened till they had already let up 35 points, and it would have been the third quarter. So it did
right. Yeah, no, the Chiefs blew them out, and they're just swarming right now. That defense, and I noticed this early in the season against the Chargers, just miscommunicate. Tyrann Mathieu, all those plays with his boy.
You see it?
Yeah, I see the onside kick that just happened. Dude, our special teams, man, I'm going on a tirade. This is hilarious. If you were watching this game, tell me this is not the worst display of special teams you have ever seen in your life. What has happened? We've allowed a 97-yard punt return for a touchdown. Our kick returner like caught the ball and went out of bounds at the 5, or like batted it out of bounds at the 5 when it should have been just gone out of bounds, and we get it at the 40-yard line. Yeah. We had a muffed punt. We've had an onside kick return for a touchdown. I've never seen anything like this.
The onside
I've never
kick,
seen it.
The touchdown got called back, but
okay, still, I don't care. They're still happening. You see them in front of you. We've lucked into a couple of these things not counting, but still, the amount of special teams gaffes and errors is absolutely comical. And I've seen some horrible special teams moments for the Packers, and we're bad every single year. This is the disaster class of all time that we are witnessing here, and we still are winning this game 45-30.
This is the type of special teams is the type of thing where it's like, oh, it's a third of the game. It's not. It's not a third of the game, but
it's like a fifth.
It is the type of thing where you can convince yourself that it's like, oh, it's no big deal, and then it comes back to bite you, especially when you have to play 4 really tough teams in a row, and they're all going to be close games. Because I mean, there's that 2010 Chargers team or whatever is a good example of they had the number 1 offense, number 1 defense, and make the playoffs. So like that does make me a little bit
of all time.
Something tells me it won't be like not such a big deal at some point. Like, because this game, it's like, well, whatever. Most games it would not be.
Yeah, no, we can't expect to win most games like this. Anyway, this is a tangent.
Yeah, let's get back to Raiders.
Is Mahomes MVP?
No, he has not been that good this year. Bladen, we had this argument. Well, no, because
kind of
he's kind of
started to make a comeback.
He has kind of started to make a comeback, but I mean, the Broncos game wasn't good. The Cowboys game right before it wasn't that good in terms of the offense. They got off to a bad start. To say that he's been better than Rodgers this year, or Brady, or even
let me
Herbert.
rephrase that, because I don't even have him as my MVP. Does he have a shot at it? 4 games, 5 games to go, whatever.
Man,
I mean, if he was like 5 touchdowns a game, sure.
Wow. I think there's a shot at it if they end up as the 1 seed and he just carries them to it. And maybe Brady keeps throwing some picks. I know he's had some turnovers. Maybe Rodgers is in it, but he hasn't gotten the buzz. So one disaster Rodgers game could kind of take him out of it. So I don't think the chances are 0 for Mahomes, but he just has not deserved it so far.
Nobody's getting the buzz right now, and that makes me because
there's no clear winner.
What I think they're going to do? No clear winner. They're going to give it to Brady because that's the coolest storyline.
No, the coolest guy to give MVP to is Jonathan Taylor.
No.
Come on, man.
No, they don't want to give it.
I wish I could get on board.
Actually, no. The coolest guy to would be Cooper Kupp.
That would be very funny. And
that would be
awesome. It's something that should be talked about if he breaks the all-time receiving yards record and the Rams are really good.
I'm starting that.
And that is now. That's not a bad narrative, and I'm surprised
Cooper Kupp is worse than 90% of NFL wide receivers narrative already. You've got everybody.
You can't push that narrative, Theo.
Start going back on that tape right now.
I'm not pushing. I want him to win MVP. I don't want him to win MVP.
I'm tweeting this out right now. Cooper Kupp should win MVP.
They've got 4 games left. How many yards does he have? How far off is he?
He's probably at about 1,200, 1,300.
I mean, that's not going to get him there, is it? He's going to need to really ball out. He's a little bit behind pace then, unless I'm dumb.
I think he is maybe a little bit behind pace, but he's going to put up some ridiculous numbers. Anyway, we are so off topic for the Chiefs. I guess we talked about Mahomes, but the defense has been probably maybe the best in the league since maybe week 6, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in the middle of the season there. I'm not quite sure when they flipped that switch. Maybe the Giants game. I know they played pretty well in that game. And again, early in the season, this defense was confused constantly. Where do we go? Movement before the snap, things not being settled. Tyrann Mathieu was a meme because he always had his hands up like, what are you doing? Those were the moments where it was like, okay, this isn't that they don't have any players. They do have players. They just don't know what they're doing. And now they do know what they're doing, and they are just winning games solely because of their defense. It's crazy. Oh my gosh, what a pick by the Packers. It is, I'm watching that live. That was really nice by number 39, Chandon Sullivan. And Frank Clark has gotten back to that place where he was when they won the Super Bowl. That's been huge. They're playing Chris Jones. Like, he's been just straight up steamrolling some guys. They had this experiment of him on the playing end, and he still does it a little bit, but he's really stepped up his play, whether he's gotten used to that a little bit or they've moved him back inside. It's a lot better. Bolton is a rookie who's been playing well recently, especially starting in that Tennessee game where he was the only guy who came to play. Honey Badger he was an impact player today. He doesn't have his hands in the air so much anymore. They always had the guys. They just didn't have those guys.
Even Daniel Sorensen hasn't been a liability.
Right. So, yeah, they just got the scheme. Those guys now know the scheme a little bit better.
So, if the Chiefs had been playing like this all year, do you think right now the narrative would be that they're the favorites to win the Super Bowl again?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Okay. Do you think they're going to stop playing like this?
I still don't trust the offense. I don't. I think they're a little bit, because they've been winning games. They have been, like, oh, Chiefs are back. But the offense has not been back. They weren't back in the Broncos game. They weren't back in the Packers game. They weren't back in the Dallas game. So, like, that's the one thing. And I still think they can flip a switch. They were pretty good today. They've been good against the Raiders both time. Really good. They've looked back. But that offense does give me some pause. And I think that there's multiple teams in the NFC that I would take over them. But in the AFC, I think maybe the Patriots could give them a lot of trouble. But outside of that, I'm not sure that
I think the Bills could too.
They beat them early in this year.
The Bills are fighting to make the playoffs right now.
The Bills secondary is good, though. That Bills secondary can make plays.
Yeah, they've got the really good safety duo.
Where the Bills struggle is teams that can run the ball really well.
The Bills are interesting. They cannot run the football with anyone outside of Josh Allen, and they didn't even try today. And Josh Allen had a great day running the football, but man, it's tough to just do that with your quarterback week in and week out. He's going to get tired. He's going to get exhausted. He's going to get hurt. I guess mobile quarterbacks, it doesn't always happen. But,
I think it's different with Allen because Allen
is a little bit more physical.
He's using his size. And
Allen, even though he Lamar
has
and Kyler are a little bit different.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Bills just can't really run the football consistently. The offensive line is not very good. And really, outside of Diggs, the wide receivers have been underwhelming, and even Diggs has been a little bit underwhelming. So there's a lot of things wrong with it. And it's kind of the same deal as the Chiefs and Mahomes, where guys go too high on him and take away the big plays. And it's like, okay, Mr. Big Play, let's make some short, intermediate, consistent, like little things. And sometimes they just can't do it. And it's been kind of the same book with the Bills and the Chiefs. And that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's just no guarantee to make. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule. They get the Panthers and the Falcons and the Jets.
Win. They're probably okay.
Yeah.
They'll probably be all right, but there's the 7th seed right now, unless I'm dumb.
No, you are
tied with a couple of teams.
Yeah, they are.
So, I mean, that's my Super Bowl pick. It feels like, well, it was. It just feels like there's so many teams that are more complete than them right now. There's so many teams you're like, they can just do more.
Who would you take the Browns or the Bills right now?
Bills.
That's tough. That's a tough one for me.
Bills.
I might go Browns. I really do think the Bills are limited.
Good. The Browns defense has looked good at times, like really.
I trust their pass rush a little bit more. I trust their second. The safeties are. The difference between the Browns safety and the Bills safeties are hilariously big. That's like the best safety duo versus like some really poor safety play.
It's a tough one.
Jordan Poyer, Browns, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, former Browns legend, actually was terrible.
I know that Micah Hyde is a former Packer, but that's a really good question. And again, the AFC is interesting because you've got a bunch of teams that could be really good, but they just aren't. Ravens,
I don't know.
Browns, Bills. There's a bunch of
they've got a nice rush defense. And then I don't really trust Baker to beat those safeties a ton, I guess, or the receivers. Yeah. So I feel like they do a good job defensively, and I trust the Bills to make a play a little bit more. But that one could go either way for sure.
I don't disagree.
I don't trust the Bills to stop Nick Chubb. Keep it 1,000.
Well, the Ravens
maybe. I don't trust them to rush. I don't trust them to really get home against like rushing the passer. I don't trust their pass rush. And their corners, I thought their corners held up all right today with Tre'Davious White with a torn ACL. I thought their corners actually held up pretty good today.
No, I mean, the Bills' rush defense is good. They don't have to completely shut down Chubb, and I don't think they would, but I think I would take the Bills.
Yeah. Tremaine Edmonds also sucks, man. He made the Pro Bowls the last 2 years. I don't know how. The dude's not good. He made it because he's young and he gets a lot of tackles.
I'd scrub. The dude can't play.
He can't play. He can't cover. His IQ is low. He's not a good cover guy. He picks the wrong gaps. He's like Milano is there. Milano's a way better player than Tremaine Edmonds is. And last year and the year before that, Milano was a better player. I mean, he was kind of hurt last year. Milano was. But the defense fell apart when Milano was out. Milano's the guy on that Bills defense. The linebacker who's actually good. Klein is not. Edmonds is not. Edmonds is just funny because he's been in the league forever, like 4 years now. And he's only 15 years old.
He's much like Jason, 40-year NFL career, and he's going to
much like Jason Tatum. He's only 19 years old.
Only 19.
He's Jason Tatum, still only 19 years old. Same with Tremaine Edmonds. But like one of these years, you're going to actually have to be good, Tremaine Edmonds. And he made the Pro Bowl, but he hasn't actually been good. It's very funny.
He's gonna be like the only player to get to his second contract and still be able to like show flashes. And not actually like still get like
him and Darnold. Darnold is still younger than whoever you want to say. He's younger than Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, like he's young, and that's it's about
all you can say about him.
Anyway,
we've talked about a lot of these games. One game that we haven't talked about, I think this is a good segue into which coaches are due to be fired. The Titans and the Jaguars. The Jaguars lost 20-0.
We were big. I don't like to toot my own horn all the time.
Oh, I do.
I believe this podcast was very anti-Urban.
Yes.
And that take has aged not even like fine wine, because fine wine takes a long time to age well, and that take has not. It has been amazingly bad.
The worst I've ever seen.
And you were like, you texted and you were like, yeah, I would rather have Hugh Jackson, because I asked you this. I'd rather have Hugh Jackson than Urban. And at first I was like, man, I don't know about that. But what more could Urban do?
I would rather have Hugh Jackson just because he's like a nice guy. Like people like Hugh Jackson.
I wonder if the Jaguars would have one if they had Kaiser.
I remember like in the Browns when he was at the Browns, it was like at least he's like cool.
Urban, it's amazing. I mean, when he first got hired, what did he do? He hired a strength and conditioning coach that ended up being racist, and I think people knew that beforehand. And then they're like, "Hey, wait a minute, that guy's evil." And then they like cut him a couple weeks later. He signed Tim Tebow. Obviously, got caught at the strip club. After the first preseason game and just in general early in the season, he looked like he was about to keel over and die anytime anything bad happened. His body language was horrific. He can't design. His play calling has been horrible. He's been asked about the team and like, yo, what's going on with James Robinson? And he's been like, I don't know. What? What? It happens every week.
Beats me.
I don't know. You realize you're the main guy. You're in charge. Who's in charge here? You.
He plays some absolutely ridiculous favorites, like the Tebow signing. Just because Tebow played for him at Florida, Carlos Hyde, who I like, is getting. He's so quick to bench Robinson because the guy behind him he played for him at Ohio State.
Yes,
that's why.
It's hilarious.
And it's just a bunch of stuff like that. Like if he is still on the team next year, which I find a hard time believing,
that guy
is gonna find a way to get Chris Olave. I don't know how that would exactly work out, but he'll do it.
Well, what
would not be a bad pick, but
it wouldn't. I mean, Wilson would probably be the guy you'd rather have, but it's insane. And Lawrence has not been good this season. He's thrown 9 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, I believe it is, 4 today. You don't do that without being a little bit bad. And it's true. He hasn't been accurate. And he's been a little bit bad. The ball placement has not been there, but dude, that he was the golden ticket, man. And he has a huge arm and he doesn't take many sacks and he's smart and he's down to earth and he's all these things. And they just screwed him. They screwed it up in a way that's the most colossal way possible.
I would get it if we were like, oh, well, Trevor Lawrence, kind of an airhead, not really all there. Then you would be like, yeah, I could see why the progression would take some time. But the fact that he has looked basically the same since week 1, that speaks so poorly to how well the coaching.
I would even disagree because early he threw, well, this year was a bad day to make this point, but early in the year he was like leading the league in touchdowns, and then he threw like 1 or interceptions. He was like leading the league in interceptions.
I guess,
and then he threw like 1 in the whole month of November. So it's like he's even like cut down on the turnover parts of his game. It's just the big plays haven't been created. So he's even showing improvement. He's already got some elite traits in the
in spite of this coaching staff.
Yeah, right. And so I was like,
receivers. If I have to see one more Three Stooges-esque clip out of them, I don't know what I'm going to tell you. Like, it's brutal. I mean, they're running in. You brought this up, I think, last episode. But yeah, they're like running into each other, like tripping over each other on routes. There's 4 games left in the season.
Yeah.
And this is like a regular occurrence. This isn't like...
It happens every game. It happens and today was the worst one when Laviska Shenault is my public enemy number 1 when it comes to running into his guy. Laviska seems to be involved in it a lot. So I don't know if it's his fault or whose fault exactly it is. But it's someone. I know that someone can do a better job, and I don't think it's Schottenheimer, because I think Ryan Schottenheimer is a decent OC. Like he led a lot of really good offenses in Seattle. There were some fundamental differences on how he wanted to approach things with Pete Carroll, but I know the offensive coordinator can design a good offense. I know that he has designed it before with the wide receivers not running into each other. I suspect it's Urban Meyer because he's just been such a clown show. I suspect he's the one in charge. I blame him. He's the one I blame, and he will not. I'm shocked he hasn't quit because he looks miserable. He sounds miserable. I mean, after the game today, like Vrabel, who was, I think, worked with him at Ohio State, was like, good game, coach. He basically just blew him off and went right to the tunnel and left. I mean, he just seems like he's having the worst time. So I don't even know why he wants to be there. I don't think anyone wants him to be there. He will not be back next year. That is a stone cold guarantee. We're talking about coaches that will be fired. Yeah.
And he does not adjust well to who's on his team. Urban Meyer is a great recruiter. And that's his big strength as a coach. And even then, Ohio State was only able to win a championship with him in the year where they had Tom Herman calling plays, and they just had the right other coaches around him to make it work. But he could get talent there, but he was not some like extreme plus in-game coach. And you're talking about him looking stressed out. There are some hilarious clips from some of the Ohio State Michigan games where he is like, they barely win and he like collapses to the ground.
2016.
He had to retire. He had to retire because they were like, dude, your heart can't take this. And he came back. This season is knocked 10 years off his life. It's knocked 1 year off my life trying to sort out what's going on. He should get fired. Next coach. That's
I do have one more thing.
Okay. One more thing. Okay. One more, Matt.
I have decided my stay hot team did not do well.
No,
I'm fully invested in my basketball.
None of ours really
fantasy team that's balling right now. But my new fantasy perspective is that do not draft players who play for coaches you don't trust, because a guy can be really talented.
James Robinson.
Yeah, it's like, and that's really the problem. He like, how many good fantasy, like your odds of drafting a good fantasy player who's on a bad team who isn't coached well is really bad. And I know that seems like simple advice, but I don't trust workload anymore. I want guys who play for coaches that I trust can get the most out of them. James Robinson had 4 yards today on 6 carries, and he was still the Jaguars' leading rusher. So,
damn,
rough. That is a tough scene. But yes, it's James Robinson. I don't know what they're doing with him. He's been a really good running back. I'm going to cast my Pro Bowl vote after the Monday night games when all the buys are done.
Yeah,
James Robinson might be on that team, might be on that vote, but they just hate. They hate his ass.
They've done nothing but like they drafted ETN and then he got hurt and they're still not giving him the work because of Carlos Hyde.
Yep.
Who is
they hate him.
Like 15 teams, right?
Seems like a nice guy.
I don't know what could he possibly have done to Urban? No clue, but it's not.
There are 2 coaches that in the game we just watched should be fired. The first is Matt Nagy, obviously. The second is the Packers special teams coach.
Jesus Christ. Someone's got to be.
Matt Nagy, we already knew he should be fired. How in the world did you put on a special teams masterclass and you still managed to lose by 15? They often say that if you can score a special teams touchdown, your like odds of winning skyrocket or whatever. And it just didn't happen. They just kept finding ways to fall down.
I wonder how many teams have scored multiple special teams touchdowns in the NFL and lost.
They almost scored 3. They almost.
That's
scored
what I'm
3,
saying. Like, how does that happen? And then if you're the Packers, you should have won by like 30. That game should have never been close. Not even a little bit. We all locked Green Bay for a reason. This game should have never been close. And yet your special teams, blunders, just horrendous stuff, kept Chicago in the game.
We talked about this a little bit earlier when that onside kick happened, which ended up not mattering. But still, yes. But as far as Nagy goes, he's someone you got to vibe check your coaches, I think. I think you want your coaches to be likable dudes and guys that you have respect for. Nagy has never seemed that way to me. Every time he's at the press conference, he just doesn't seem like, if I had my list of guys I'd want to play for, Nagy is kind of low on that list. So that's kind of what he doesn't seem like a big motivator. And again, this is from an outsider's perspective, but Mitch Trubisky said this after he went to Buffalo. it's nice to be in a place where they care about your development or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. So clearly the coaching staff didn't really seem to be the greatest to some of the old players, or at least in their opinion. Fields in some of the games this year, like just putting him in bad spots, bad routes, just bad play calling. Bill Lazor will occasionally call plays and the team will look markedly better than when Matt Nagy was doing it. Mm-hmm. What's he there for? And what has he shown to stay?
Well, I mean, I do agree. Like, the number one job of a coach is to keep the vibes in check of your NFL team.
Yeah.
But it's not complicated with Nagy. They put together a pretty good team. He failed to develop a quarterback. Didn't do it with Trubisky. And I'm not counting out Fields in the slightest, but he's not put Fields in a good position to win. And that development quote is probably all you need to know. If you can't develop a quarterback, you can't be a head coach in the NFL. You need a quarterback.
Unless you're a defensive guy, in which case, and they had Fangio, and that's when they were a powerhouse, is when they had Fangio and that defense was so good. They did sneak into the playoffs one other year, but it was the first year with the 7 seed, and they got blown out by the Saints, and they performed horribly. So
what is that? 500, right?
Yeah, they were like 500. Like, what is that really? Yeah.
Right.
So great. Yeah. Nice job. You made the playoffs, but what is he as an offense? As an offensive genius, as a quarterback guru, what has he done? Nothing at all. So yeah, easy.
Absolutely gone. And then your backers, you already know. We don't need to. I don't need to torture you anymore with reminding you of.
We won. We put up 45 points, so I'm not in the worst mood. But it's just hilarious how bad special teams.
It is hilarious. It's an important part of the game because had you not been playing the Bears, you would have lost.
Yes. We have been over this. Next coach.
There's some other teams you could have been playing.
The Jets.
That you probably still would have beaten.
Had you been playing a good team.
My
Carolina Panthers, coached by Matt Rule.
Luckily, the problem at the Carolina Panthers, the cancer that had been infecting the organization, Joe Brady, that monster, is gone. He was always the issue, and now there's nothing but glorious prosperity ahead. Am I right on that, Matt?
I kind of believe that Joe Brady was crowned as like a great coach. And it's like, he's going to be a head coach before he had even done absolutely anything in the NFL. And I don't think that Brady is going to go, like, he will find another spot and he'll probably be good there. But he didn't do a good job in Carolina. Make no two ways about it. You can say, he didn't have a good quarterback. He didn't have a good offensive line, but I fully believe he was involved in the decision-making process about who to bring in. And if they did a terrible job bringing in players, it's on them. Matt Rule just does silly stuff. And his handling of the quarterback position has been same thing with Nagy. But his handling of the quarterback position has been so laughably bad. They have $35 million tied up into quarterbacks who do not play for them, right? Like, who aren't playing. It's Sam Darnold and Teddy Bridgewater. And it's not even that they're just not playing for him. No good. He has already missed 2 times. And we're not even through his second year. And I'll admit, Cam did not play well today. Cam has been shaky, and you can say it's like, no offensive, all this crap. I'm not even going to make excuses for him. But doing this crap where we go from Cam to PJ to back to Cam, unserious. The defense, and he's supposed to be this great defensive mind, falling apart. Been a disaster. I mean, they could still easily be in the playoff hunt if their defense could get it together. And it's just, watching this season has been frustrating. Do you know how many times the Panthers have started off like they're 3-0, they're 4-2, and then they just never win another game? I don't think this team has won a game in December in 2-3 years. I don't remember the last time they won a game in December. It might not be since 2017. It's bizarre. So I think it's the same thing. And doing all this stuff and leaving Cam, screwing over Cam and then coming back to him. It's just, I think I find it hard to believe that he hasn't lost the locker room a little bit. And the handling of the quarterback position could not have been worse. And they're screwed for next year because they owe Darnold $18 million. And we're going to get to the second round and we should have like the 38th pick or the 40th pick or whatever. And we're not going to have it because of a quarterback that will probably want to use a pick to trade away to free up money. So,
you know what Matt Rule's record at Baylor was?
No.
It was 19-20. He had a losing record at Baylor.
Yep.
Tough.
And now he's been the head coach of maybe the second most unserious team in the NFL behind the Jaguars. I mean, the moves they have made in the offensive line room and the quarterback room are just
hilarious,
mind-bogglingly bad. No other team is doing it. Like, the Panthers are not viewed as just this joke of an organization. They're not. Sorry, Bladen, the Browns can be, the Jaguars are, some of the bottom feeders. The Panthers are not viewed in that regard, or at least the Browns used to be. They have been just as bad as anyone has in terms of their decision making over the past couple of years, and their leader has been Matt Rule during that time. And maybe it's not his fault, maybe it's the GM, but the coaching staff, the head man who didn't have a winning record in college and has a bad record now, it's what do you do here? What exactly do you do here? You know, what are you good at?
The Bridgewater move I can even understand, but like, I'm sorry, dude. Trading a second and a fourth for Darnold is just so, and the 5th-year extension, it's just brutal. And the offensive line moves, they signed 2 of the worst offensive linemen who got playing time. And that was known when they signed them. But they gave them like real contracts. They owe those guys $15 million next year. And they can only save $5 million by cutting them both. This is, Cameron Irving and Pat Elflein, who we're talking about.
Yes.
I know.
Awful guys who had failed out of multiple teams. So it just doesn't like, and then the offensive line is the worst in the league. Their quarterback situation is the worst in the league. One of the worst in the leagues.
One of the worst in the league. I mean,
it's really bad.
And they let Curtis Samuel walk, who signed for far less than they paid those 2 offensive linemen who have done nothing. And then they spent their second round pick on Terrence Marshall Jr., who I still have.
He's a healthy scratch.
Nothing. This healthy scratch.
And they spent and they spent their third round pick on CJ Henderson and a second round pick on Darnold, and both are bad. One hilariously bad. Yeah. So you're spending all these picks on, and when you trade, you should be getting a known commodity. That is why you do it. When you trade something, you're like, I'm going to kind of sacrifice potential for something that is good right now. So when you're trading things and then you just get something bad in return, you're just wasting time and money and contract because they're already halfway through their contract or whatever. It's hilarious how bad they are. So yeah, Matt Rule.
They tried to be the Rams and they fucked it up. Really?
Yeah, I would just say my thing with them is like, and you might be like, oh, will you really fire a guy after 2 years? What message does that send from Tepper? But it would be one thing if it was good process and the results hadn't turned out. This has been horrible process. Right. If you sign these 2 terrible offensive linemen who nobody wants for real contracts, it better work. If you sign a quarterback or trade for a quarterback who has been terrible so far, it better work. You can't do all that crap and be like, well, we're going to make it work. And then if you don't, be like, oh, I need another chance. No.
And this is GM stuff too. So I don't know who the GM is, but he's gone. And then the coaching stuff, it's also on him because I believe he's consulted. But his like reasoning for firing Joe Brady is like, we got to run it 33 times a game. Like, hello, with McCaffrey, you realize that's probably why he gets hurt all the time, right? Like,
why he gets hurt all the time,
right? And like Chuba, like that's just not. That arbitrary goal is probably not the number one way to win a football game. Like if you want to,
he gives when we have this many rushing attempts thing, we win the games. But the reason that is because not because the running is what wins you the game, but when you're winning a game, you're more likely to run.
Yeah, it's just like those arbitrary goals of like an insane, and it's like I'm all for winning the game on the ground if that's what floats your boat. Like go ahead and do it. It's working pretty well this year for a lot of the top seeds, but. If it's not there, it's not there. Don't force a round peg in a square hole, and that's what they've done. So, Rule gone. We got some other guys on this list here. We've spent a lot of time on these 2. But one more I want to talk about is Joe Judge and Mike Zimmer. Those are 2 more that I can think of. And I
Joe
think
Judge is just like, that one's almost not even. We've talked about it before.
Both of these guys are kind of non-negotiable.
Zimmer, I have some respect for. Zimmer, I think, is not. We've talked about some hilarious clown shows in Meyer and I think Judge and Rule for starters. Zimmer is not a hilarious clown show. Dude is a really good defensive mind, really good. And if you don't think that, I mean, look at some of the third down blitzes he creates. Look at some of the defenses he's had. Look at some of the guys he's developed. He is a good defensive mind, a good one. But at some point, the goal is to win a Super Bowl. And at some point, you got to look at your head coach and your infrastructure and say, is this capable of being the best in the league? The best in the whole league? And with Zimmer, I think the answer is no. You've ran it through enough times where you have a pretty good idea that upgrades are possible. And you had a good run, but with him, it's just kind of his time, and you've seen what he is, and it's not quite good enough. And if I was a team, I'd hire him, and he will be a great defensive coordinator for someone. Yeah. He is not out of the league. He belongs as a defensive mind in this league, but you need something a little bit more.
You know who Vikings fans on Twitter I always see them complaining about the way he manages games.
Yes.
And like, I think Bengals fans kind of have that same problem with Zach Taylor. They're just like, man, you know ball, but can you just it's like, ball, but you don't know chess, right? Yeah. You kind of have to know both.
You know who this sounds very, very much like? Ron.
A lot of coaches. Yeah. Yes.
This sounds exactly like Ron Rivera, where he's an NFL level coach, and Ron Rivera is an awesome guy, and I love him, but
someone you'd love to play for is Ron Rivera.
There's a point where it's not that they aren't an NFL level coach. They've just run their course, and it's like, you've done what you've done. So that's probably the same spot that Zimmer's in.
Yeah. And McCarthy got to that point as well. Like McCarthy, a lot of playoff runs with Green Bay, a lot of success, a lot of great offenses, and a lot of it was Rodgers. But he helped develop. I mean, head coach, you got to develop a quarterback. Yes. And you can say that Rodgers did that. So Zimmer there's a lot of coaches who are in this tier where it's like, maybe you don't completely get rid of them and banish them. Urban Meyer is below that tier. Zimmer is in a tier far above Urban Meyer, but probably still someone you probably let go of. One more name I want to throw out is Joe Judge, who I think is hilariously bad. I mean, how many Giants retired this preseason? It was like 4 or 5.
I think it was.
He's like making them run laps, which is just like a middle school thing. Fights with his assistants, just this hard ass routine that just doesn't really seem like. It seems like fake. It seems like what he thinks is good, but I don't know. There's a fine line between.
It's like he's living in like a movie.
Yes.
They don't. I have obviously never been in the NFL, but correct me if they don't do that. You don't just be like, we're just going to run you to death. They do that in high school. They do that in middle school because you have no discipline and you're out of shape. But if you're an NFL athlete, you're in shape, you probably have some discipline, unless you're like Johnny Manziel. And even then, like your coach is like Hugh Jackson. So it doesn't really matter. Or like a Hugh Jackson equivalent. I don't know.
It does. Making players upset over running laps is just such a silly thing to do.
Yeah, it's fake. It's fake hard ass. It's fake hard ass.
And all your guys are like, I'm done.
Really?
All the vets are like, I'd rather just. And they're getting paid, big bucks, and like, screw this. I'm not doing this.
I tried to defend Judge. I did, but it's at point I can't.
Can we talk about one more guy?
Is it Vic Fangio?
It's not Vic Fangio.
Oh, that's one more I think is worth discussing. But I'll just say the answer is no. But the offensive staff in Denver, yes, that needs to change. If that means firing Fangio, I think you fire Fangio. But if you can keep him and substitute out the offensive guys, I would try to do that because the defense is good. But who is your guy?
Zach Taylor. What do you guys think about him?
I don't think he's it. But the Bengals have overperformed this year.
Yep, and it's a delay. You can't. Do
you fire someone after they technically did a good job? No, you don't. But I fully expect him to not be that guy.
Is this bad
I think if
process,
you ask
good results?
Bengals fans,
Bengals fans seem to agree.
Yes, they don't love him at all.
They don't.
Mm-mm. And it's
because, again, it's the same thing. He does not manage games well. And that's they're like, we should win a lot. There's a lot of games that they feel like they should win and they just can't, or like they'll keep teams in games that they have no business being in.
Yeah, it's just they've got a lot going for them right now. But every season you have Joe Burrow on a rookie contract is an extremely valuable season that you do not want to waste. So if I was the Bengals owner and it was up to me, I would not want to waste those years. I'd probably move on from Taylor.
That would be far. Yes, and it would take a lot of guts, and you'd have to find someone really good. It might depend, like, who could I get? Who do I think I could get? I would need a really good handle on that before I did it. But
Zimmer or Zach Taylor?
I would rather. I think I'd rather have.
I feel like Zimmer
just because
might have the experience. I think that
go Zimmer and then bring in Joe Brady to call plays.
Honestly, that's not the worst thing.
I think I'd rather work his magic on defense. Joe Brady gets basically his dudes back, and they
Hey, don't give the Bengals any ideas, man. I don't want to deal with this right now.
Zimmer came from Cincinnati. That's where he was before Minnesota. When the Vikings hired him, they hired him out of Cincinnati. It all makes sense.
So the pieces all
It all makes sense. He returns to Cincinnati. Joe Brady comes and gets Jamar Chase and Burrow. But I don't think it happens. I think we're discussing something that's kind of off the table, but it is an interesting thought exercise on what you would do.
If we happen to get ownership of the Bengals before this next offseason starts, that's a pretty good idea what's going to happen.
I've already said that if I'm going to buy an NFL team, it's going to be the Browns. So
what if
the Bengals were the only one that was offered?
The podcast needs to get a lot bigger for that to happen. We need to get a lot.
I would rather not own an NFL team than own the Bengals.
I mean, I know the McAfee contract was really good, but
we need a couple more dollars.
We're not quite McAfee. We're not quite McAfee.
We went through this whole segment and we're basically like, should this guy get fired? Yes, 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 and yes.
Yes.
We think everyone should be
actually, but that's a good point. If you're thinking about it, how often can a guy go from like, maybe we should fire him, or it's like he might get fired this offseason?
A lot of Browns fans are kind of in that zone with Stefanski right now, where they're like, is he the problem? And
no.
Like I said before, dude.
Browns fans, please do not blame Stefanski yet. Like we need, please,
we're out of people.
Christ.
It can't be the offensive line. It certainly can't be the running backs. We already scapegoated the receivers.
It can't be
whoever the OC is. Blame them. Don't blame Stefanski, though.
Stefanski is good. Okay, Stefanski's good. I don't want to hear.
I agree.
I don't know what these last couple podcasts we've brought up Stefanski being bad. I don't know. I don't like it.
I know. I see it all over Twitter, and they're like,
all right,
get Stefanski. Right. I'm like, but that pretty much wraps things up for us. If you have one takeaway from this podcast, please remember that it doesn't really matter who your team drafts at quarterback. If your coach sucks, he won't develop. I promise you. Look at all the coaches we listed and we're like, should this guy get fired? Chances are they didn't develop a rookie quarterback 9 times out of 10. But that pretty much wraps things up on our end. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday to talk about the NBA once again. Actually, no, we won't. We won't.
So we'll be back on Saturday because we're
going to be in LA at the Thursday night Chargers and Chiefs game, which is going to be a ton of fun. We're super excited. And we're not entirely sure the process of how we're going to record the podcast because obviously we're going to be at the game. We're not going to be able to record like we normally do on Thursday night and upload Friday morning. So we're thinking we might record Friday morning, but we will keep you updated on Twitter. So if you're not following us there, make sure you're following us there. And we'll keep you updated with what's going on, when we're going to be releasing the podcast, all that stuff. But until then, thank you all for tuning in. We will be back eventually Here are the Stay Hot shout-outs, and as always, from Corn Boy, Lemon Boy, and Gambling Addiction Boy, we'll catch you on the flippity-flop.
This is Reese from Canada, and the Bills are the Notre Dame of the NFL, and that's all I have to say. I'm not a Bills fan, but I'd hate to be one. This is Reese from Canada again. I called the Bills the Notre Dame of the NFL at 24-3, and they have came back and made it overtime, so I'm very wrong.
Hey, what's up? My name is Jan. Just wanted to give you guys a shout out because you're my favorite podcast and you just dropped a collab with my favorite YouTuber, Rusty Bucket. Y'all killing it. Go Cardinals, go Suns.
Hey, it's Braden Brown from Waynesburg, Iowa. All I gotta say is Patriots are the best in the nation. 9-4, threw the ball 3 times, and our running game is dangerous. We're Super Bowl bound and we're gonna kick Brady's ass. That's all I gotta say.
This is Tyler. I'm from Virginia. And I just got to say that being a fan of the Washington football team is the worst mistake I've made in my entire life. This team fails consistently. Man.